Hey, Arlen. Hey, Arlen. Hey. All right, everybody. Welcome.
You sending Arlen the link?
Arlen's got the link.
All right, everybody. Welcome.
And we should be live and going, guys. So expect to see Arlen drop into our group here in just a second. I hopped on to broadcast this in Zoom, and Arlen was there. It's like, hey. Arlen and I have had some interesting Zoom fusion, and I don't think it's based on his understanding of technology, seeing as he created the technology we all love. So expect Arlen to hop in here with us in just a second. In the meantime, welcome everybody to what might be the greatest technological failing of all time for Integrate for Live, which is saying something so far. If you're on Zoom right now watching us, and there's quite a few of you doing that, we are not actually in a Zoom webinar. We are using StreamYard, broadcasting live to the Integrate Live YouTube channel and sharing that on Zoom. So I'd love to see from the folks on the Zoom chat, can you give us a thumbs up in the chat window if this is working okay? There is about a 10-second delay. In the meantime,
yeah,
Alan.
This feels like we're running a VM that's running another OS inside that OS. We're running,
and then remote desktopping into that one.
This feels like? This feels like Jeff learning to use parallels in Apple.
Just remember, everybody, I do control the mute feature.
Fair enough.
All right, so the reason we're doing all this is the Rundown is going to start using StreamYard, and we're going to be broadcasting the Rundown live on LinkedIn, as well as our YouTube channel moving forward. LinkedIn just hasn't caught on fast enough to know that we've hit our follower minimum in order for them to turn this feature on for us. So we're cheating the system today, and hopefully, Bill Gates, if you're in the Zoom, please help us out. Give us, wouldn't that be something? All right, before we kick off, Alan, I have a riddle for you. Now, it's not a dad joke, although I'm loaded up today with a few. But I've got a riddle for you.
All right. Well, dad jokes are my, kind of love language after sarcasms, but I'll take a riddle.
Okay. What does data connectivity and two Boeing 737s have in common?
I know this. I actually don't know it.
You've got no clue. All right, you ready for this?
Yeah.
I'm going to give you the answer in long form. I want you to think back, and Kyle, David, guys, think about to the last time. Might be pre-COVID, but you were on a Southwest flight, and it was every seat filled. Can you picture that?
It's hard.
Yeah, my imagination's not that strong.
Well, think about all of those people, right? That's about 190 people, 180 people. Now double it. That's two Boeing 737s. That's about 400 people. 400 people is the number of men, women, and children that our sponsor, Software Toolbox Data Connectivity, has just provided clean drinking water for the next year of their lives. How awesome is that?
It's pretty awesome, Jeff.
That is really good.
Man, I was waiting for some. It didn't just make my day or my week or my month. It might have made my year knowing that what we're doing here at Integrate Live can turn into such good for people that we'll never meet. So Water for Good, which is a well drilling and well maintenance nonprofit in the Central African Republic. Alan and I, our hearts are for this mission. And so when a sponsor comes in, we're immediately making a donation on behalf of that sponsor to Water for Good. I don't know if you guys saw the coffee chat a couple weeks ago with Jim Hawking from Water for Good, but man, he grew up in Central African Republic. He has a heart and a love for the people there. And this organization now is providing clean drinking water for over 1 million people in Central African Republic. Yeah. So Alan, you know a thing or two about drilling wells. What could you imagine trying to drill an oil well with by hand or with primitive technology at best, and to access that site, you didn't have any good, decent paved roads?
All right. Well, first of all, we're from the West, so we wouldn't do that. We would build the road, build the equipment, and we would not do it for the purpose of water, because we take for granted the fact that we can go to a faucet, turn it on, and get drinking water and not even think about it. So no, I can't imagine what it means to have a primitive piece of equipment that is kind of shoelaced together, knocking well after well after well out, and they're just killing it. So yeah, it's a different mentality than what we would be used to.
And you know what I love, and so I'm going to lean in on my education buddies here in the room, as well as those on the call that are passionate for teaching and for learning. What I love is that Water for Good, this isn't a bunch of Westerners. This isn't a bunch of, you know, folks that look like us showing up in Africa saying, hey, we're here to help. They have used locals. So they have created well drilling businesses, trained and taught. And now those locals are going out drilling wells for the villagers. And they've created maintenance teams that every 6 months hit all of these wells that the village is paying for. So they've created jobs and a local economy around well drilling and well maintenance. So the villages own these wells, they pay for the maintenance. And I don't know if you noticed from, let's see if we can, from the video loop, they're not just doing hand pumps and foot pumps like you might think. They've started doing some pretty cool technology, building out water towers, using solar panels and solar powered pumps to fill those water towers and creating gravity fed tap stands. So let's dream big. Let's dream big. Could you imagine if we pick up the sponsorships that we need, and Kyle, David, Garrick, Kevin, your businesses, your companies, the people in our community and their companies catch this vision? I'd like to think we could do 3 or 4 of those well projects over the next year or two, just out of this community. And that means 10 to 20,000 people pick up permanent clean drinking water. Anyway, that's the big dream. Waterforgood.org. You're going to hear us talk about it a lot. And I really hope that you'll join us in this mission.
So if somebody like us, you know, my company, Ectobox, is interested in doing that, what do we do? How do we participate?
Yeah.
Is it going to that site or something different?
You can start just as simply as going to waterforgood.org. You can donate right there. I'll tell you that the reason I started supporting them so long ago was that if I give them $1, over 90 cents of that, based on last year's financial records, are going directly to well drilling. So this is not a big overhead. It's the money you give is going right to the people, and a simple $5 gift takes care of one human being for a year for clean drinking water. Yeah, it's real hard not to give $5 a month and sponsor 12 people. And most companies, if you're part of a large corporation, they'll probably match your gift. So that's how you start. If you do it, please let us know. We want to be able to celebrate together as a community and collectively move the needle. Okay. Should we shift? Should we jump
Shift.
in?
I
Okay.
got a story.
Okay, good. What's your story? Go, Alan.
So I went to my mechanic yesterday. Needed to get a gas cap for my Kia, so I went in and I said, "Hey, can I get a gas cap for my Kia?" He stopped, looked down, thought for a bit, and said, "Sounds like a fair trade."
I was trying to figure out why you're going to IKEA for a gas cap.
IKEA.
Kia.
Kia.
Okay, got it.
And guys, I was visiting my relatives a couple of weeks ago. Part of town I wasn't really familiar with, and what do you do when you're with your older relatives? You go visit the cemetery to see your ancestors, and I wasn't really sure where the graveyard was, so I put it into my GPS to get there. And when we pulled into the driveway, my GPS told me, "You have reached your final destination."
That's good. Oh, that's good. I've just realized I haven't seen Arlen pop in. I want to make sure that he got my link. All right. Listen, project review. If we go for too long here, we'll never get into it. Let's jump in. Project review. Last week, virtual workshop. Alan, give us a summary of what we saw and witnessed in case someone's watching and they haven't seen the virtual workshop.
Yeah, what we did was we showed how you can take a piece of equipment that's critical within an OT environment that is rather large, right? So the last company I worked for, we had thousands of devices with hundreds of people, sometimes thousands of people who had access to that control system. And so using the Epic, we showed how we can do zoning and conduiting with a hardened OT device in a PLC panel that would allow you to segment off that critical piece of equipment, having all your incoming ports locked down and closed, and being able to leverage MQTT Sparkplug B to get all of that data out. And since it's persistent, you now have the ability to read and write. One thing that I did want to mention that we didn't talk about last week is, and if Arlen gets in here, we'll get him to talk about it. But so one of the things that we've struggled with Sparkplug B is the reality that once I connect to the broker and I have a persistent tag that's writable, how do I validate the person who is making the request to write that has the appropriate rights? So in the past, once I give somebody the topic name and the password, they could just go in and anybody who had that could make that right. Working with Travis Cox and Inductive Automation and Arlen's team, we actually were able to pass the security context through Sparkplug B. So now what happens is when we get that right down at the edge at the Epic, Ignition actually validates the user, and we now have that access control all the way at the edge. So it's no longer, hey, I make a write in Sparkplug B, or I give somebody the topic name and the password, and they can just write whatever they want. No, now we can control that all the way at the edge using the new, what are we calling it, Arlen? What do we call the security context that we're using to control the Sparkplug B writes?
Command security.
Command security. I love it.
Yeah. And we're putting together a tutorial on how to enable that and how that connects into the underlying Ignition security system.
So since I've come across that before, can you talk a little bit more about what that is? Because that's been one of this has come up before of how do I ensure that actually what I'm sending is what should be sent? So
Well, go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, so what we're doing is we worked with the Inductive guys and we worked with Arlen's team and we validated that we can pass the security context, the user information from Ignition, and then Ignition at the edge prior to that write being written validates that the user has the appropriate credentials And then if he does, the write happens. If he doesn't, the write doesn't happen.
And those credentials, because with Sparkplug, we've got the ability within the schema to add other information. So now a D command. So you've got your regular Sparkplug. And in my mind, this is unique to the industry. In other words, with Modbus and Allen Bradley and DMP and you never have a validation of a command. And the D command was just like all of those, right? You formatted a proper coil command or a set point command, and you published a D command over Sparkplug, and it went out and it happened. But since MQTT transmission is catching that command, before it issues it to the driver, it looks inside of it and applies the credentials that came with the D command and says, okay, was David authorized? Oh, no. So the command's never issued to the driver. And the other advantage is that's logged then at the audit log at the edge.
It's something special, I'm telling you, because what we're doing now is we can again start putting out these devices, take an Epic or a Rio, whatever you want, stick it at the edge. You now can publish to a broker with all the incoming ports locked down within the actual, whether you're using PepLink or Cradlepoint, you can lock it down there, or you can lock it down right at the firewall in the Epic or the Rio. But every single write has to be validated at the edge before it gets executed.
It's interesting because I was in Oklahoma. Well, the day after the virtual workshop last week, meeting with a large oil and gas operation in midstream and upstream, and we were talking about the virtual workshop. They said, we've built this. This is how we are actually using our SCADA to control remote access to PLCs, but we had to spend a ton of time and a ton of money to build this ourselves because we knew it was that important. And they did it 5 years ago.
Yeah.
This idea of if we had only known, if this technology was available then, we could have done this so much faster. So I think it's, it gives great validation to hear that another organization had already addressed or saw this as an issue. And I'm just curious from everybody else's perspective, is this something that you're hearing end users ask for, or are they not even thinking about it yet?
I think they're not even, at least some of them are not even thinking about it. We're working with a organization that provides services for universities and other organizations that help handle their energy assets. And we're talking about a project for a university where they have assets within, it's almost like two OT environments, one SCADA port connectivity with the assets behind another wall. And we and they are going to need to provide services to those assets, which are right now, I think, relatively unsecured. Then there's even other assets they're going to be adding onto it that need to be accessible remotely. And we've talked internally already about applying this kind of idea so that we can keep them secure and enable a lot of that IT capabilities with the OT tools, the kind of topics we talked about last time, and also ensure that future scalability idea, some of those requirements that we talked about last time. So there's already we're seeing right now right in front of us.
And to Jeff's point, a huge portion of our infrastructure, whether it's electric, water, wastewater, oil and gas, upstream, downstream, they came from private networks, right? They had their own VSAT network. They had their own private microwave network. So therefore, I don't need to worry about it. But then you ask the question, well, hang on, somewhere that VSAT system is touching another network. And if somebody would gain access into that, all of a sudden, they've got access to everything, right? So it is the education of, maybe I should look at this and apply that. So, but I think with this, it gives them a migration strategy to be able to do that as well, which you've got to. I have yet to do one project where 50%, especially in infrastructure, where 50% 50% of the project is coming up with a good migration strategy, because I have yet to go to a midstream that goes, oh yeah, Arlen, we're happy to shut down the pipeline for 6 months while you guys put this in.
Why not?
Yeah.
Actually, Arlen, that's not true. I think somewhere around April 2020, they might have said that.
I think they did that actually.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, Doug Miller over on the Zoom side sent a chat out, said, hey guys, fantastic feature. Historically, validating at the edge hasn't been available. PLCs just know it received a Boolean true on Modbus register XXXXX, so it acts on it. Best we had was IP whitelisting. This takes it to a whole new level.
Yeah, and I just want to also shout out to Doug, because this all came about because of a conversation that me and Doug had, and we were talking about what I was doing on the Air Energy side and what he was doing on his company's side. Okay. And I had just completed getting an edge device deployed at the edge, publishing to our service bus in Azure that would then transfer all the way down our stack. But it was read only. And you know why it was read only? Because I knew the moment I started talking about allowing the writes to happen, I was going to get the question, how are you going to validate at the edge that write is supposed to happen? And I just didn't have a good answer. So me and Doug were talking. Doug was having the same issue. And we're like, let's just set up a meeting with Arlen and Inductive and find out, is it possible? Is there anything we could do? And so really that whole feature set came out of just a conversation me and Doug had. And then, it's going to be transformational for us, because being able to now know I can deploy at the edge anywhere in the world and still validate all the way back at the edge is it's awesome.
So Alan, Alan, for those that don't know, he came out of upstream oil and gas. Now he's working really full-time with Integrate Live, as well as Alan, you're working as a consultant, right?
Yep.
You've just recently engaged with a top manufacturer as a consultant. Is this a strategy that you're going to be bringing as an architecture consultant, bringing to the table with them as well?
Well, I don't know. I hope, but I don't want to. The last thing I want to do as a consultant is come in with the solution, right? The last thing I want to do is, and here's the first thing I'm going to do. The first thing I'm going to do going into this manufacturing company is learn their culture, learn their processes, and figure out what technology they have in their portfolio, and then try to help them really think through a roadmap. So I've done a lot around cybersecurity. I worked very closely with our cybersecurity team at Era, and we have done a tremendous amount of work around our control system patching and vulnerabilities. We brought Indigy in. I don't know if you know about Indigy. Indigy is an amazing company that got bought out by Tenable. So it's now Tenable OT. So if you ever hear about Tenable OT, it was Indigy. Well, what Indigy did, they were the first company to do passive and non-passive scanning in the control system. So we set up Indigy in our control system, even having PLC 5s, and it went out to every single PLC. It scanned that PLC and brought back every single card, every single firmware, showed me what the name of the program was, and then it connected to NIST, and then tied my actual hardware to the vulnerabilities that were out there. It was amazing. And so we've done a ton of work around that, right? Well, here's where what I've learned the hard way is the last thing you want to do is come in with, hey, this is going to be your silver bullet. This is going to save the day. And the reason is because if you just go look at the amount of money that is being spent and the capital that is being ingested into these cybersecurity companies right now, anything you deploy today is going to be obsolete in 2 years. Dale Peterson has been saying that over and over again for years at the S4 events. And it's true. You look back 2 years ago on what was there, everything has changed. So the industry is moving so quickly. So here's where as a consultant, what I'm hoping to achieve is let's tie digital transformation or smart manufacturing, and let's set a roadmap so that we can actually deploy digital transformation while putting in the absolute best cybersecurity technology at the same time. Instead of trying to be reactive, let's move into this space of smart manufacturing, and in the roadmap, have in the roadmap best in class cybersecurity. And so that's kind of the thought process that I'm approaching this as. So I think it has a space in it, but the last thing I'm going to do is go in and tell anybody, hey, I've got your solutions already, and it's going to be amazing. So yeah, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, that's great. I'd imagine, guys, Kyle, Kevin, David, your time working in the field, right? Working with customers, you've probably seen some train wrecks from the security side. Let's not name names, but can you we love telling stories here. What's some of the things that you've seen that have just like shocked you?
I think that some of the train wrecks, if you think about a train wreck analogy, it starts with, some little anomaly, something on the track early on that you can see ahead of time. And we've all seen passwords on Post-it notes, shared passwords, admin passwords haven't changed on hardware devices. And that's really where it starts. And we've seen a lot of that. But then the train wrecks are really it's almost like the rubberneck kind of thing. You have to turn your head and watch that thing because it's just amazing to see. It's sad to see those big catastrophes happen. Dave, have you seen anything you can think of?
Very common one I run across is that your IT and your OT LAN are on a shared network, so that any of your business applications are tied right into your control system. And you would think, well, there's just no way people still do that. And the reality is, actually, they do. Now, granted, they're already in the process of trying to update that, but one of the things about specific to the application is that in all the IT and the cybersecurity sessions and trainings that I've been involved in, and I'm not the expert on that, I just want to be very clear, a lot of your issues come from inside your own network. Somebody opens an attachment to an email, somebody plugs in a flash drive to some piece of equipment. And even though we tend to focus on it's this hacker that's trying to get in the system, I didn't know the number, but the vast majority of those attacks are something that are internal. So that's, the train wrecks, and what's great here is that we're protecting that internal network from ourselves as well. So,
Kyle, what have you seen?
Most of what I've seen is kind of what Kevin was talking about. Admin password being very, very common throughout the control space. The kind of tag along with what David said. A lot of what we saw, out in the field was, well, let me rephrase. let me start over. A lot of what I did was based out of with Alan. That's kind of how I got to know the control system space. And so, as Alan was talking about earlier, a lot of their security was up to snuff at the highest level, and they started really getting into it with Indigene and things like that. And that's what I got trained in as we kind of worked through the control system space. As I started working with other customers, then I started seeing some holes, and they became more glaring when I got to do some real comparisons. But as far as like specifics, I can't really.
Kyle,
give you any. Let's just kind of jump out.
Sounds like Jeff is back.
Jeff.
Am I back?
Back.
There we go.
This was an endorsement for Cox Internet Service Providers out of Northwest. I got
Not good.
Not
Garrett, how about you? Do you have any stories?
Oh yeah, I mean it's the same sort of thing. I was an integrator for many years, and then worked in the plant floor and sticky notes and admin passwords, because maintenance and engineering is just too lazy to come down there sometimes. So just let the operator manage it themselves, or and those sort of things are very common in the industry. So just getting rid of, and another one, the default passwords that some devices come with that never get changed. So you can go find them and log right into them if you remembered what a default password was to a device. So any set of hardware device that comes with a default username and password already gets my stomach going.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
You mean I'm supposed to change those?
Yeah, exactly.
So, you want me to tell you one that's I've seen that's scary?
Yes, yeah, definitely.
Have you ever heard of Mouse Without Borders? Anyone? So Microsoft has a tool called Mouse Without Borders. It's actually an amazing tool. It's just software. You can download it on the 2 different PCs, and it gives you a single mouse and keyboard, and it just through software does kind of a KVM, right? So your mouse will literally flow over to your laptop, come back to your desktop, right? And you can transfer files over that software, right? So 2 different PLCs, they're on the same network, kinda. Well, here's what I've seen happen. I know it works because I've done it in the past. But you can buy Bluetooth network connectors, connect a IPCS or ICS computer using the Bluetooth dongle, and then put another Bluetooth dongle in your desktop PC and create a little network just between those 2 PLCs over Bluetooth. And now I can transfer files between my network computer or my enterprise computer to my ICS computer over a piece of software over 2 dongles that just literally plug in. And now all of a sudden I can just go across that network, and I've bridged that network for the reason of ease. So my mouse, and I can transfer files. I don't have to use what is that file? What do we use, Kyle, for transferring files? Remember?
WinSCP.
WinSCP. Thank you.
And the thing about those kinds of solutions is the users who are putting those together know enough to be dangerous, very dangerous.
Very dangerous.
And they're just trying to make their life easier. And they've got all these firewalls, literal and figural firewalls that have been put up by IT, and they're just trying to make their life easier, but they don't know what they're doing and opening up major issues, which is really fun.
One of the worst. I'm sorry, Dave. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that just speaks right to the comment I was making earlier, that there are things that occur down on the plant floor, and I'm not here throwing stones at anybody. It's, hey, I got to get this done. But doing those types of things, because that laptop, if it's on your business network and it has some kind of Wi-Fi connectivity to the outside, theoretically, somebody could get inside that ICS system. I mean, they'd have to know about it, but, they may be just waiting for it too.
So then does this drive a need, and maybe this another topic here, IT putting up roadblocks for OT, making their life more difficult. Is there a solution or an integration, an idea where IT should be working with OT, getting those IT capabilities and using OT devices and security to allow these people to have, an easier life, if you will?
Oh, that's a great question. I think, Alan, I'm going to kick that to you, because I've heard you talk about your frustration when you were when in your former role and just trying to get OT to sign off on a strategy. And there was a thing that you did that I love. Before you go down that path, we were talking about password management. Arlen, any idea how to hack Forrest Gump? Do you know what Forrest Gump tries to use as a password?
No.
One Forrest one. Doesn't work. One Forrest one. Come on, Arlen. I thought I was going to get you laughing on that one. Arlen has been historically difficult to get laughing at that. Alan,
did you hear Benson's joke last week? He fell in his driveway.
Yep.
Alan, what's a good strategy that if you're on the OT side and you're and you're trying to get IT to sign off on something you'd like to do, what's a good strategy that we could take that would bring that IT/OT common ground, that common, get everybody on the same page?
Yeah. So my background, when I was in OT all the way up until 2013, from 1990 or 88 to 2013, I was part of the problem, right? I wanted to do things the way I wanted to do it. I wanted to have the ability. So here, I'll just give you a perfect example. In 2011, ERA wanted to do they wanted to segregate the, I can't remember the name, segregation of duties. So they did not want somebody to be able to create a database, have access to the database log so they could go in and delete certain things out of the log. And so they took the rights away from us in OT to create and manage our databases. We couldn't even run stored procedures, right? And so they took all that away from us. You know what we did? We just transferred over to Access. Said, fine, we're going to use Access for everything. Well, that created a giant mess, right? So in 2013, I transitioned from OT into IT and began working with the IT space, and then eventually as the operational technology architect, and trying to figure out how to extract data from OT and find value in it through, getting it contextualized and modeled and all those different things. Well, when I got into IT and I started to recognize, all this pain that I'm experiencing now that I'm in IT has been self-inflicted because of my misunderstanding of what IT's purpose was, and not seeing IT as a true partner in the sustainability and longevity of whatever company you're working in. And so what I found was, as I created the relationships with these incredibly sharp IT people and learned their domain and learned what their priorities were, and then it became very easy to be able to have those conversations about, okay, yeah, I completely understand what your priority is. My priority is I don't want to blow up this equipment, I want to kill somebody. And if there's a problem, I cannot just shut down the network. It has to stay up. I got to notify, I got to let people know there's a problem, but we can't just shut it down. And once we started having that conversation, everything got not just easier, we actually started making progress into going down a road of, yeah, okay, let's work together to accomplish both of our needs. And so that led to, we eventually put a team together and spent 6 months, and we took the entire OT team within ERA and brought them under the CIO and converged OT and IT. When that happened and OT came under IT, now we had a voice at the table, and then IT began to learn our processes and things. Everything got easier at that point. It didn't fix everything. There's still battles, but you have to understand what IT is trying to accomplish and understand that they are an advocate for the company and for OT and will help OT, but we got to get on we got to be able to speak the same language. And all that means is I'm speaking OT and they're speaking IT, but we're saying the same things, we just don't understand. And so once you start bridging the actual language barrier, right?
Yeah.
Then things get way easier.
So to cross that chasm, you've got to start by understanding their language, each other's language, step in, wear each other's shoes, so to speak, to get their perspective of your situation, reverse them, and then start to, I don't want to say merge the groups, but really start to actually pull people together into rooms and get stuff done. Where you have a single common objective. You identify what those single common objectives are. Is that a fair summary?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And not everybody's going to be able to do convergence, right? Not everyone's going to be able to bring OT under IT. But if you're an OT person that has some say or even kind of leading in that area, it will pay dividends for you to spend an hour a week just taking somebody from IT to lunch and just, man, tell me what you guys are doing. Tell me the pain you guys are going through. Help me understand how I, from the OT side, can maybe help with some of the problems that you're having, right? And that right there will pay huge dividends. When I first came into OT, I don't tell many people this, but when I first came into OT, the first thing I did, or in IT, I'm sorry, the first thing I did was I would find those people who were willing to help me. And the company had a COR, it's a certificate of recognition. And I would give them $100 a CRM for helping me. And I start building this capital with these guys. And then eventually those guys that were pivotal for me ended up getting a better job and leaving. But it was super impactful at the beginning, because as you built this, really the trust between the two, then you could have really good conversations about, yeah, this is why we can't do what you guys need us to do. And then they'd be like, okay, well, we still have to do this. You got to help me figure it out. And then you can start actually getting somewhere.
Well, I think a lot of what you just said, Alan, I mean, the way to start that conversation, I think we went through in the actual workshop, right? In other words, the diagrams have been, you could have a whole conversation just around the diagrams that Benson put off on segregating and say, look, guys, look, IT, this is what I have to deal with. Yep. And then IT can say, look, OT, this is what we have to deal with. But actually using MQTT and the fact that you can only make outbound connections, and the fact that you're not leveraging a protocol, you're leveraging TCP IP security. It has nothing to do with MQTT or Modbus or Allen Bradley or anything. And I think the more that we can get the realization, because we've got 45 years minimum of, hey, it's RS-232. I got to plug it in. I got to ask it for information. Therefore, I need connectivity. And so we're in that for the next decade at least. We're going to be in that migration of hundreds of millions of pieces of equipment that we're not going to throw away. We're not going to rip them out. We got to integrate them in.
Yeah, and the reality of taking a hardened PLC and leveraging those IT kind of techniques and methodologies, man, now you're bridging the gap. Right now I've got my OT people who are starting to learn these IT methodologies, but they're using an OT piece of hardware. And so, yeah, it really becomes very something very
Garrick,
cool.
Garrick, obviously, last week we saw how Groove Epic becomes that, I don't want to say middleware, right? Because I always think middleware, I think software, but it's that middle piece of device that secures a 40-year-old investment and moves it forward into modern security best practices. But I know Opto's past as being solid state relays and in fact, you guys are still making and supporting the solid state relays you've made for years. How does a company like Opto go from solid state relays to this Groove line?
Well, that's a good story, Jeff. But one thing I wanted to let you all know that, I've been trying to start a new diet recently and trying to lose some weight, but I just got too much on my plate right now.
That's good.
Yep.
That's good.
So yeah,
much better than Forrest Gump.
So the history of Opto, even dating back to the solid state relay, we were at the forefront of technology. As the original founder of the company is one of the patent holders for the solid state relay. So he saw a need for new technology at that point in, the early 1970s and developed that, which then, kind of drove Opto 22. We were, in the early 80s, introduced PC-based control on the plant floor. So that's kind of something you unheard of, with old IBM stuff and things like that. And then going from there and developing our own controllers, and then to the new thing, with our Groove View, where we were in, let me see what year, in 2009, 2010, around there, introducing a web-based HMI that uses HTML5. So having a product like that, and then kind of just building blocks one on top of another, using our field-proven digital and analog control that we've been making and still make, for the last 45 years, folding that in with some of our IT-related stuff that we've been doing in that meantime, and then putting it all together in one package to kind of provide that hardened OT with modern IT security standards and that sort of stuff in one single cohesive platform. So we've kind of always been driven to try new things before anybody else has.
Yeah.
Well, that just reminds me, Gary. I mean, people don't. Again, you think about this. So remember when Andy and I were working on MQTT? That was 1998, 1999. If I would have walked in to any midstream pipeline, any water, wastewater, any major facility, and I wasn't running deck hardware with DECnet, they would have laughed me out of the building. So look where, so basically from 2000, so in the last 20 years, there's been such a sea change in the hardware and the software that we get to apply to these solutions. Before, if it wasn't running on a DEC VAX, or even earlier, if it wasn't running on a DEC PDP-11, you didn't even have a chance.
Yeah.
And one of those big evolutions actually kind of occurred in the boardroom at Opto. Is that right?
Oh yeah, the OPC Foundation was formed, and the original documents were signed right here in this building that I'm sitting in our conference room. With Microsoft and all those players in there. So
that's wild. So we've got
talk about technology. With all of the technology that's happened in childproofing. Like, I've spent a ton of money childproofing my house, and the kids are still getting in.
Well, in that, it's kind of like that idea that you fleshed out earlier. Like, OT is going to always find a way to make widgets, right? Like, you can put as much security proofing up there as you want, but if it gets in the way of widget production, OT has a mandate to make widgets. So I love that idea earlier of getting OT and IT to understand each other's needs and understand each other's problems, so that there's consideration from both sides on how do we do this securely to avoid the train wreck that could be coming down if we just proceed.
I'm assuming when you say widgets, you mean they're going to get their job done no matter what.
Right.
Yeah, because no different than for us when they shut down SQL, what did we do? We went to Access.
Found when
they so here's the thing about OT, right? All of us in the OT have kind of gone down this path of, this battling of IT, and we always find a way to create our own shadow IT. It just becomes natural because we got to get our work done.
Yep.
And so the really that working with IT so that you don't create those shadow ITs, which are a huge vulnerability within our space, right? It's critical.
I've managed pay plans for salespeople most of my career. Creating compensation plans for salespeople, and I one time had a heard a owner of a company complain that his salespeople kept manipulating the sales plan for their advantage. And I laughed, and I looked at him and I said, the salesperson that doesn't do that is a salesperson you don't want. Like, the second you don't have a salesperson trying to find a way to sell more things to benefit them, it's like the OT person that you have that doesn't learn how to solve a problem that comes up in front of them to increase production is probably the OT person you don't want. Like, yeah. So Kevin, you've been at this for quite a long time, right? You're the president of Ectobox. Tell me, you started Ectobox when? What?
Just a little over 20 years ago. Started in software. Like, you could say kind of on the IT side. We weren't an IT department, but wrote software for a lot of different organizations. For the Pittsburgh Symphony, we're based in Pittsburgh. Wrote software for sales organizations, wrote software for IT companies, wrote software for manufacturing companies. And over time, because of our region in Pittsburgh, Cleveland, etc., loads and loads of manufacturing in the area, we started to enjoy working with manufacturers. I have always, I think, Dave, last time you had said, I forget what the device was, but one of the recent conversations we had here with Jeff and Alan and the gang, you would take something apart. Well, for me, it was clock radios. I took them apart. I never put them back together, but I always took them apart to figure out how they work, because I love to understand how things are made. And I've seen how Q-tips are manufactured. I've seen how hip joint replacement parts, as if you go to the part store for that, have been made. I've seen how cars are made and all kinds of things. It's crazy. And so we started to work more and more for manufacturers because, well, it was fun and it's interesting and there's a lot of value there. We then got into, hey, IoT is an interesting kind of thing. Let's get data from the machines. And then pretty quickly, we started to realize data from the machines is interesting and valuable, but the value really goes crazy if you start to add context to it. Let's get the information about the job, the customer, the operator, the machine, all the rest of that, and then it goes crazy from there. And then I started to hire in a lot of OT people, and now I'm starting to speak that language, and we're developing a company that is an integrator that is also building products, providing services, but also building products for manufacturing. And so it's been a progression from a different perspective than I think most people here on the call. A lot of people have come from manufacturing industry OT and landed where you're at. We've come from the other side, kind of from the IT side, and we've crossed that chasm, and now we're just, we're doing a deal with the devil, I guess, at this point. But we've gone
Wait a minute, who's the devil here?
I'll let you answer that one. But now we're really getting into becoming or have become for quite a while now an SI, a systems integrator. For manufacturers, applying a lot of the best practices and principles around software, agile, how to solve problems, business challenges from the top down, all the rest of that kind of stuff, and doing it within the OT environment. So it's been a really fun progression. But the real question is, I started in a couple other careers before software. Any guess as to what the first one was?
I got one. Navy SEAL.
No.
I was going to go with rodeo cowboy myself.
Oh, that's cool.
Navy SEAL because they haircut maybe, but no. Rodeo cowboy, no.
So no military background. Okay. School bus driver.
Oh.
No, I don't have my CDL. No, sorry.
You owned and operated marijuana dispensers.
No, here's. You want to make this call really interesting? Hold on.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
We're off script.
Let's do this.
Any guess as to what this is?
Astronomer.
That is a musical instrument.
Australian Aboriginal.
Didgeridoo.
Yes.
Are you? Whoa! Don't put that back when you play it.
Now I want to hear it.
Yeah.
Let the cat out of the bag here.
No, it'll sound like some bodily function at this point because I haven't practiced it.
Future coffee chat with Kevin and didgeridoo concert on a Monday morning coming up.
And the ukulele is downstairs in the
All right. So that clues us in a little bit. So you're a musician, classically trained musician. Is that what we're?
Music education was my degree and was my first career.
Oh.
Music teacher.
That's awesome. That is what age group?
It was high school.
Oh, okay, nice.
It's good.
Nice.
That's for music.
No.
That's really
started-
getting the talent there. Yeah.
Well, that's exactly it. It's the music, it's the structure, it's the math, it's the language. Then things just translate. I've seen so many software people have been really successful that were amateur and professional musicians. So it connected well. I didn't get too far into the career and then switched. A big switch. So if you want to guess, feel free to try to guess the next one.
I don't even have I know it's not school bus driver.
Numbers, money,
Banking.
Accountant.
accountant. It was
Oh.
Yeah.
Again, numbers guy, math. Yep.
I'm sitting for the CPA exam, and I'm thinking this isn't as interesting as other things. And a friend of mine, who's a good friend still today, said, that software thing that you're doing, you could make money working at home doing that. I'm like, really? Sign me up. And then,
I was going to say actuarial science, but the odds weren't in your favor. See what I did there?
That was good.
I know Kyle came in from, because was I in your interview with Avadine?
No, actually, Pat was.
Okay, but I know that Kyle came right out of college as a software engineer, and came in, and we put him directly into the ignition team and worked on the ignition team. What was your, coming from, because you were doing machine learning, analytics, you were building models, and then coming from that kind of a coming out of school and then getting into a team that is fighting to not have specialized code in our system. What was that like for you?
It was a little unique in the sense that because just like you said, I went to CSU San Diego or one of the San Diego Convention Center to actually present on finding disease in grape leaves using image recognition, machine learning, data analytics to kind of find out, and alert people when, hey, this plant is diseased. We need to rip out the plant prior to it being transferred through the entire vineyard. So that's kind of one thing that I did, and I presented on that. It was a lot of cool stuff. But moving from that to control system space, that was actually one of the things I presented in my interview that Pat was part of. But being going from that and then going into control systems, it did feel a little restricting right at the beginning because they want you to do something very specific. They want you to a lot of what we were doing was conversion, right? So we keep exactly what's here, whatever the code is, whatever the structure is, whatever we're doing, make sure that is intact, make sure nothing changes. We don't trust you yet. Essentially, kind of like we're not sure about you. But I went from that and then demonstrating some of my expertise and some of my strengths, and then going from that scenario to giving a lot of freedom, which was really fun. We got to do a lot of cool. I forget what we called them, Alan, when we were doing some of the, when we finished early because of the tools we were building. I had a magic button I built at one point. We called it, and what it would do is when we were doing the conversion from an older HMI that will not be named to ignition. One of my buddies and I, they got hired at the same time. We built a magic button that would literally go into the old systems, the HMI, read its file system, actually rebuild the screens in ignition, actually go into add the listeners, add it to the vision screens, truly rebuild the entire app from one button. It would run for about 30 minutes, and then it'd be done. It would have the entire system rebuilt without us having to do anything. So
I want to tell an interesting story around that because, and I know this is kind of off the sidetrack, but I think it's important because what I realized early on when we brought these young, incredibly talented people into our team, and we asked them to do not create custom code. I want you to create tags, and I want you to create graphics, but I want you to not actually create the graphics, use the graphics that are already created. So what we ended up doing was I told them, I said, look, we're going to lower your base work down to 60%. And then the moment you get your 60% done, you have 40% to do whatever you want, as long as it is going to help the project, build some tool or some utility. And some of my highlights of working with that team was going in every day going, what did you create today? And I'm telling you, they built a button that goes in and grabs the XY coordinates of a screen in the old HMI and literally would build the new ignition screen, figure out what type of I don't want to give it away because I don't want the other name of the HMI, but what type of, was it an analog, was it discrete? And they would literally put our template in the exact same XY coordinates on a brand new screen, and it would work. It was amazing.
That's awesome.
That is
That
amazing.
is.
Hey, we've got a question over on the Zoom side.
Hey, I want to say thanks to Arlen. You got to drop off, but
Yep.
Oh, okay.
again, appreciate you, Arlen, and all the work you've done for us. And yeah, we're excited to see where we go.
Absolutely.
Enjoyed it. Thanks,
Arlen,
everybody.
buddy.
Carolyn.
See ya. So Jeff Rankinen, and Jeff, I apologize if I didn't get your last name pronounced properly. Jeff's over at Pennsylvania Technology College, or I'm sorry, Pennsylvania College of Technology.
Penn College.
Yep. So Jeff wants to know, and David, I'm going to throw this right at you. Okay. This is good.
Okay.
Jeff wants to know, what's the best way to train up high school students or soon to be high school graduates for careers in Industry 4.0?
Wow. So Jeff and I have had this conversation, and one of the things we talk about in our there's a group of people that get together is how do we do that? And there are plenty of people that are trying to create that exact curriculum of exposing high school students to manufacturing, automation, manufacturing technology. So what I do personally is that I volunteer to go in whenever there's a career day or some kind of opportunity for people to come in and talk about what they do. I go in and participate in those. Actually, Garrick, you sent me one of your Groove Epic just so I could go in and talk to some middle schoolers about that. Because what I'm finding is that, my oldest, he graduates here in a couple of weeks. He's part of an IT academy. Well, he's going to be a full stack developer when he goes into computer science. And there's people that get into healthcare, and there's people that do more what's called the trades. And what I love about automation is the fact there's something there for everybody. And I've seen pictures of these control cabinets that people have built that are just amazing. Sometimes it's some eye candy of just how well it is laid out and done. There's a skill set required for that, or people that like doing graphics, or people that are creating these little apps that automatically draw the screens. So from my perspective, and something that I'm working on is an academy model that is geared toward the high school students, that introduce them to those types of things and codifying what all of that looks like, because there's IT needs. We were talking about this IT-OT convergence. If you're going to be working on a plant floor, you need to have some IT skill sets around spinning up servers, or in working with several of the HMI applications, Ignition being one of them. There are process historians that people need to know, and what are those things. So really for me, the best way is just to get in front of the people. And anytime there's an opportunity to talk about manufacturing automation, manufacturing technology, you take it and go in and present it.
You think about those shows. Now the show, man, dates, they just leave my head. But I want to say maybe even 20 years ago, I can remember the show when it first started, How Stuff's Made. To show the manufacturing process. Those shows fascinated me. Those shows fascinate my kids. That everybody enjoys, whether you saw it at a doctor's office while you're waiting 10 minutes, hopefully, in the waiting room, or, everybody is fascinated by those processes. But it's missing from the general STEM education of even turning on the idea to a talented STEM kid that this is a path they could go down.
Yeah, or for me, any kid, because I don't like using the word vocational. I think it's somewhat loaded, but there are people that just college is not for them. Right. And I think that's great, but they have some amazing skill sets. And there's a person who does a YouTube channel around PLC programming, and went in for several days for a couple hours to some high school kids around some PLC programming. And he was blown away by some of the problems that people could solve just by exposing to those types of things. And I'm in agreement. I think there's something there for everybody, regardless of what your skill set is or what's interested. I'm a big believer in it's. This was a college professor, and I don't remember much from his class, but what I do remember him saying is your own talent and interest will get you where you want to go. Just keep moving. I think if they get this exposure, their talent and interest will get them right where they're supposed to be in that career.
David, you kind of always have struck me as somebody who is obviously passionate about education, but also you yourself, I know, you take that lifelong learner role in your own life. I think a lot of us have that in common. Where in your story, who are some of the men or women that really fed you and developed that passion inside of you?
I was very fortunate in this. So the reason why education is important, and that could be a whole episode in and of it to itself, is if people are exposed and have access to things. If you're familiar with the book Outliers, Malcolm Gladwell, author, I really enjoy a lot of what he writes and what he thinks about. It's just people having access to these types of things. And I was fortunate that, hey, there you go, mine's sitting over on the shelf. I had access to some teachers that provided some very good guidance. And, I don't want to get it back into the background, but, I could have just as easily been a statistic and gone a whole other way where I would have been, quote unquote, in the system. But I was fortunate that I had some of the right people passing that on. So Kevin was talking earlier about going into these plants and seeing how stuff is made. That's been the best part of my career. Is you go into a refinery, you go into a power plant, you go into a pharma plant, food, and just how Post-it notes are made and just all types of things. It's amazing, and it's always of interest. And for me, it's how I'm wired, is that I just enjoy continually learning things and being exposed to new information. Like, wow, that's really great. That is how I'm fed. Meanwhile, realizing that if it weren't for some of the people in my background, I mentioned that college professor, or some high school teachers, or down the street, a friend's neighbor. One of my friends growing up, he just said, "Oh, you don't want to go into business, go into engineering." I mean, just having those little comments along the way and pointing you there. So some of it's a calling, in the sense that we are all here to make the world better, I like to think, and my part of that is helping the people be exposed to the things that are out there and those opportunities, because I just truly believe that if you can learn about those what's out there, your life is just it's so fulfilling on the types of things that you're doing.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, there's nothing sadder to me than meeting somebody and asking them, what are you passionate about? What's the books you're reading? What's, what class are you going to take? What hobby are you feeding? And they don't, that's not something that they have the time or the availability to even think about, because whatever their current path in life is, so much is being asked of them. They don't have the capability to grow in that way. And it's not because they wouldn't want to, it's just that's coming back to the water for good at the very front. I think about that, right? Like if you don't have basic access to safe housing, to good nutritious food, to clean water, if you're having to work as a single parent 3 jobs to keep the lights on, right? If like that is what gets robbed of you, is this ability to pursue passions and learn and develop. I love the fact that we can help as a community change that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Garrick, before you were a Viking reenactor.
That's a hobby.
Yeah, it's Garrick's Weekend. If you don't know about it, you can go down to Viking Wars. It's like a family dinner theater there outside of Temecula. You can see Garrick on main stage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Garrick, what brought you to Opto? What was your background?
My first experience out of college, I worked for a system integrator, and kind of say like the lure. I always loved technology. I always loved computers. I was a big tear my parents' computers down and, like you say, not rebuild them very well, but as you said earlier. So I got into that, and then I wanted to do more. I wanted to get out and see the world, because I'm coming from Kansas and having only ever been on an airplane twice in my life after getting out of college. I didn't have a lot of experience, and system integration came about, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna try this, get to travel, get to see the world. But what they don't tell you about a lot of that is you get to see the inside of a lot of manufacturing facilities and not a lot of the world, but it's for another story. So I did that for a lot of years, and then I wanted to get a more, location-based position, and so then I moved out from Kansas to California and started at Stone Brewing as a process engineer there, where we kind of took them from sneaker net to full-scale, plant floor to ERP integration over about a span of 7 years, using inductive automation and technologies like that to kind of propagate that, and then wanted to get even more local.
Whoa. We're not going to skip off over that too fast.
Oh,
I don't think that I knew that you worked at Stone Brewing.
oh, yep. I was a process
Wow.
engineer there for about 7 years.
Okay, there's a whole lot of cool knowing that you. I mean, that's one of the top. I won't say micro, but craft breweries. I mean, in the nation. So
Routinely top 10,
Good one.
in production.
I'd
Yeah,
just
in
like
all
to say
50
I listened to Kevin last week when he said one of the things he really liked about Garrett was that he worked for Stone Brewery.
Yes, Kevin did mention that. Yeah.
I must have been having an ISP issue. During that part.
But that experience there really got me motivated to kind of do more, because like I said, we took it from a literal sneaker net where they were going around to each tank and writing things down and completely automating the process, so that now they could go and scan a bag of malt and it would automatically decrement from the ERP system, and then when you hit the thresholds, we would automatically order more malt, so we could really, without someone having to take those to the purchaser and the daily docket, we could do it all automated. So that was a real eye opener of what you could, what you can build. And then just, seeing what Opto 22 was offering, this is right when so I started Opto 22 right when the Groove Epic came out. So that was one of those things where I was like, this looks really cool. And they were hiring, and I lived in Temecula, and I was like, well, I don't have to it wasn't a commute. It was 45 minutes to an hour, but, I was like, now my commute is 7 minutes, and I still get to play with all the cool hardware and all this stuff. So joined the team, and it's been a great experience. And we've really, I really learned a lot more about how the IT side, because I was very OT focused. We did work with the IT department very well at Stone, and that was one of the nicer things, hearing a lot of horror stories. We were pretty cross-functional, and that we needed something from them. We'd sit down and they'd be like, yeah, how do we need to facilitate this so we can get, access to this sort of stuff in a secure mechanism? So that was kind of my.
It probably had nothing to do with the fact that there was beer in every meeting, right?
Beer just seems to make things, the lubrication that makes the meetings go, And so, I got a little taste of what the IT side, required, and we, worked with them on setting up VLANs and these sort of things that I didn't know anything, much about, and so. Here and now learning, just like the wave of IT information that has been pouring in, with security and certificate management and all these different aspects of it that have now really become, the daily process is very awesome. And I don't even know where we're going next, but I'm looking forward to it.
No, that's awesome. I think that there's so much growth ahead of Opto. You guys are gonna get 5 years from now, 10 years from now, looking back on where you're going to go and that history of just leading that cutting edge, bleeding edge technology push that's in the DNA there. It's going to just keep going. That's going to be awesome. Well, guys, we're starting to wind down. There was something that we've been meaning to try this out, and I have given no preparation to anybody.
Awesome.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no pressure.
No pressure, but I've wanted to try to execute as a close on one of these rundowns for a while, a bit of a dad joke lightning round. And look, Kevin's already uncomfortable. Garrick's loving it. Kyle's just going to disconnect. I can already see it. Do we have it in us to go a little lightning round on dad jokes?
How many you want?
I mean, I just think until they get too bad, they got to stay. They've got to stay on board, above board, I should say. But I'll tell you an experience I had the other day. I was outside of my bank. The guy at the ATM in front of me, and he was struggling. He asked me if I could help him check his balance. I gave him a shove. He fell down. It wasn't very good.
Hey Jeff, you know what Spartacus said when the lion ate his wife?
I don't know.
Nothing. He was gladiator.
Speaking of being out in public, I walked into a bar the other day, and there was this group of people that were all in a row. And as I walked past, they all hit me. That was the punchline.
Hey, what'd the fish say when it hit the wall?
Damn.
Damn.
This one's for Kevin. I got one for Kevin here. I've been listening. He's a music guy. Been listening to this new band. It's called 1022 Megabytes. You probably haven't heard of them because they haven't had a gig yet. A little too technological.
Earlier, I was in my office and the book fell on my head. It's my own. Oh, never mind. I got it wrong.
Those are the best dad jokes right there.
Yeah, that's the quality.
You just ruined the delivery of a dad joke.
Yeah. Well, so you heard about this cheese?
I've only
plant.
got myself to blame. Myself. Get that?
There you go.
Yeah.
That was a punchline, but went away at the last. But right at the critical moment, it just went away.
There you go. So you heard about the cheese plant over in France that blew up?
The cheese plant.
Yeah, there was a cheese plant that blew up in France. There was debris everywhere.
We were talking about my prior careers, my other jobs that I've had in the past. When I used to work at a shoe recycling plant, I left because it was soul destroying.
I was working at a keyboard factory. They fired me because I kept missing shifts.
I got a job as a security officer once, and I was a night security officer, and they said I need to watch The Office. I got all the way to the 8th season and still wasn't sure why.
It reminds me of the time I worked at the eyeglass factory and got caught in a machine. They fired me. I made a spectacle of myself.
I bought a pair of shoes from a drug dealer. You know how I know it's from a drug dealer? Because all day long I was tripping.
So last week, my wife and I went to a magic show, and it featured this Spanish guy that apparently his act is that he could disappear at the count of 3. So when he came out on stage, he started counting and went 1, 2, and then he was gone without a trace.
Jeff, you know what the difference is between a hippo and a zippo?
No.
One's a little lighter.
Do you know what you call a blind dinosaur?
No.
Do you think he saw us?
Pretty good.
Oh, Kyle, give us one and we're going to wrap. Just one, Kyle.
This is a horrible one to end on. There were 2 people that walked into a bar. The first one had an excuse, but the second one should have seen it coming.
I love it. Everybody, thank you for being here today. Kyle, David, Garrett, Kevin. It was a lot of fun. This was it was a ton of fun. I hope our audience, I hope you got something from this. And please communicate back to us. Easiest way to do that is hit us on the Integrate Live LinkedIn page. Alan and I are constantly watching that page. Message us directly, comment in that group. We'd love to talk to you more. And a little teaser, we've got another sponsor. We'll talk about it probably in our Monday morning coffee chat, and if not, definitely on the front side of our virtual workshop coming in June. Virtual workshop. So can't wait to tell you more about it. Until then, everybody, thanks for being here.
All right.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everybody. Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Man, everyone just bails. Are we live still?
I love it. Yes, we are. And now we're not.
All right.
See you, everybody.
All right. See ya.
Later.